chapter 26. Love shouldn't hurt. I have a returning guest, Lindsay Johnson. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me back. I feel so honored to be back a second time.
You're like my first guest having returned, so this is pretty exciting for me.
Wow.
But let's do our first cheers.
Cheers. Refreshing.
I'm drinking my favorite Pinot Grigio. What are you drinking today?
I'm actually drinking a beer. I got some Sapporo because I felt like I wasn't ready. All I had was red wine, and I wasn't ready for red wine yet.
I agree, because I'm usually red. I can only drink with a meal or at night.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going wine tasting, then I'll have obviously the wine the entire time I'm there, red wine. But yeah, what kind of beer is it?
Sapporo.
Oh, I've never had that before.
Yeah, it's good. It's like really light. It's just really easy to drink. So
I actually gave up beer back in July. So it's going to be a year this July, which is super crazy. It has helped. Like, I kind of noticed a difference on certain things because I do have gastritis, so it's kind of helped calm that down. But girl, do I crave beer sometimes. Like,
I bet. I know I crave beer, especially on like a hot day.
and it depends. Like, if I'm eating like pizza, like I want a nice cold, blue moon with my pizza, and yet I'm like, I want to stay strong. But anyway, enough about alcohol. Just to kind of let everyone know, yes, Lindsay was on chapter 17. She talked about her being an activist with us and with me. And honestly, that was one of the highest viewing tea times that I've had, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. Cool. Even on YouTube, I think that chapter still has more views. I mean, my YouTube channel hasn't really kicked off. I have like 5 views, but your tea time chapter 17 actually has probably the most on there too, which is really exciting. And I think it's great because that tea time, was so important. And you talked about such an amazing cause and what mattered. And I think that's why that one has the most views, because that one people can really hit home with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's really relevant right now. So I'm glad that people are hopefully watching and learning something from it.
I know. I continue to every time I watch them. I mean, I don't try not to watch all my tea times because obviously that's very time consuming. But every once in a while, I like to go back and be like, oh, yeah, like this happened, or,
Yeah.
which is really great. But yeah, Lindsay's going to share with all of us today. She was actually married for 11 months in an 18-month relationship with someone. The title kind of says it all. Love shouldn't hurt. So she's going to go down her journey with all of us and kind of explain what she had gone through. Just a quick little disclaimer, this one might be super sensitive for some viewers. She does talk about verbal abuse. She's going to be sharing her stuff. I'm going to kind of chime in here and there about what I've experienced or what people who are really close to me have experienced as well. So I just kind of want to let everyone know, if you've ever dealt with abuse and you might not like to hear it, it might be a trigger for you, this might not be the tea time for you. But yeah, I think that's it. Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. And again, thank you again for having me here and giving me the opportunity to share this story. I've always have felt like I wanted to be as open and honest about my story as possible because I want to prevent other people from having to go through this because, when I was in this relationship at the time, I knew that there were things that were wrong about it. I knew that I wasn't being treated the way that I deserved, but I also couldn't really figure out exactly what was wrong. Or it took a long time for me to come to terms with the fact that I was actually in an abusive relationship. So I hope that people can hear this and either get out of an abusive relationship if they're in one, or if they start to enter into one, start to see the warning signs in advance, because it's hard to do that when you're in it,
And I think too, what you and I have spoken about before is when people hear about abuse, you automatically think, the physical abuse, the hitting, the touching, that whole thing. But it's so much more than that. There is that verbal piece too that so many of us don't might not, say that it's abuse because, oh, that's just how that person is, or that's just how they talk to me, or, they're never going to change. I mean, there's so many excuses that we as people make about, about people who are putting us at harm. But no, we have to recognize it and be like, no, this is verbal abuse. You are verbally abusing me, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of the way that my ex-husband really abused me, it was verbal for sure. It started to become physical, but it also was a very mental and emotional too. Like he was very manipulative, he was very controlling. And I think something that abusers do is they try to, and this is what he did, is he would always say, you know, I'm doing this because I care about you, because I want you to be safe, because I want you to be healthy. But it got to the point where he was like controlling where I went, who I saw, what I could eat, how much time I could spend outside, what I wore, how much makeup I wore. Like it was every single thing. And I think that's really common in abusers. And I feel like it's easy for us to kind of, the way that he always said it was like, oh, I care about you. And that's why I'm telling you to do these things. But actually, he was just controlling every single part of my life. So definitely, I think it's important to realize that that is also abuse, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So let's take it back from the beginning. How long did you guys date before you got married?
Yeah, so we dated, I want to say, for about 6 months. So I was 22. So I was very young. And right off the bat when I first met him, I feel like he he really like reeled me in right from the beginning. The first time I ever met him was at a wedding, and he was super charming and sweet, and he made me laugh and really singled me out of the group, and was just talking to me, which was just nice. I didn't really think anything of it at the time. And then the second time that we hung out, he immediately, like, there was something that I said that like made him upset. He said that I like was belittling him or something. And he immediately started attacking me and saying that, like, how could you say that to me? That's such a horrible thing to do. Like, I don't know if I can be friends with you. I don't know if I want to be friends with someone like you. And he made me feel so horrible that I felt like I needed to prove myself to him. I
And
was like, oh,
and this is the first day you met him?
this is the second time
Okay.
that when he and I actually hung out one on one. It wasn't really a date. It was more like we were just hanging out. But um, I instantly felt like I needed to prove myself to him, and I needed to show him like, no, 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 I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm a good person. I promise. Like, I'll be a good friend. And then there was this whole like on again, off again thing with him where he would like be like, no, I can't talk to you. I don't want to be friends with you. And then he would like call me like an hour later. And then he'd be like, we're not going to talk for the rest of the week. And I'm going to like block you. And then he would call me like a couple days later. So it was already like right from the beginning, it was this constant like on again, off again.
Why at that moment, because you guys were still so new and fresh, why didn't you call it quits then?
I honestly don't know. Like, my friends, like my roommate at the time, who was my best friend, was telling me, like, yeah, why are you giving this guy, the time of day? And I honestly can't, I don't know. I can't to this day say why I did, but I think maybe there was something about the way that he did talk to me that made me feel like, oh, he's this really great guy and I need to try to like meet this standard, I guess, and prove myself to him.
And that, I think that is it right there. Us, especially as women, and I'm not saying it's just women, there's, men and men relationships, women and women relationships, whatever it is. But us as women, I think we are, and I hate to blame it, but it's society, and it's kind of how women in general have been brainwashed, that we have to prove ourselves to be worthy. We have to prove ourselves to be good enough for this man to want us,
Hmm.
right? Like we have to make sure, our hair is looking nice, makeup is dolled up. We have to make sure that we're presentable. We have to make sure that we are, using our manners and we're proper. And we have like, because something in us tells us that we we want that. We want to feel valued. We want to feel important. We want to feel special. He made you feel special that day you met him because he singled you out, right? Like he gave you that attention that no one else was giving you at that moment. And that is something that you valued, and that's something that you cherished, and you wanted that to continue. You wanted that feeling of, you know, being seeked and being wanted. And that's so unfortunate because so many of us women put ourselves through that.
Yeah. And then it got to the point where, because he was very sick, and now in hindsight, I don't, you know, I always say he claimed to be very sick because I think a lot of it was mental health. I think it was also a way for him to control and manipulate people. Um, but he would say things like, well, people just always walk out of my life, and people see how sick I am and they give up and they leave me. And so it became a thing where I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm going to be the better person. I'm going to be there for you no matter what. And so it was almost like I dug my own hole where I was like, I will always be there for you. Even to the point of it harming me, I'm going to put you first and try to help you. So I feel like that's how he kind of,
And that
oh,
becomes your integrity, you know, like you as
exactly.
a person, as Lindsay, the Lindsay Johnson that I've always known has always been sweet, amazing, compassionate, caring person. And here's this person challenging you on
Yeah.
your brand, on who you are, on your personality, your heart, your soul. So at this moment, you're like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm not going to be like everyone else. I'm not going to leave you. Then it became a challenge for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And then when we, because we got married so quickly, we got married after having only dated for 6 months. I think he proposed to me maybe 3 months into us dating. It was very quick. And there were so many different layers to that and what led to that. Part of it was, yeah, I'm going to be there for you and I'm going to help you and I'm going to prove myself. There was a huge religious component to it. So I was very, very religious.
Was he really
I grew up in the
well?
church. Yeah, he was too. Yeah. And so he told me that one night, because again, in the beginning, it was this back and forth, back and forth. And he told me one night that he had been praying about me and that he asked God to give him a sign. And if God gave him a sign, that would mean that I was the person he was going to marry. And so he claims that as soon as he said that prayer, I called him like a second later. And to him, that was his sign. And, as someone who did believe in God and who did believe in signs like that, I was like, oh, is this the person? Is this the person that I'm supposed to be with? And then I felt like that I was seeing signs too after I was praying about it and stuff. So then it kind of became like, well, if God is telling us that we're supposed to be together, then I guess we're just supposed to be together, um, which I don't think is the case now, obviously. Um, so there was that. And then this is another, I think, classic thing that abusers do is they start to isolate their victims. So he started to drive a wedge between me and my parents because obviously my parents and my siblings and a lot of my friends were saying like this guy is no good, because he already was kind of starting to control me a little bit even before we got married. And they could just sense like something was wrong with him because I became really obsessed with him. Like I always was like constantly answering his phone calls. Like I would go visit him and I'd be with him from like 8 a.m. to like 2 a.m. and then I would drive home and I just like was so consumed with this relationship.
Do you
But anything,
do you feel sorry?
oh, go ahead.
Do you feel
No,
that
you're good.
you did that because you honestly enjoyed your time with him? Or were you afraid to not spend time with him?
I think it started out with me enjoying my time with him because again, like he did have a good side to him. Like he did have a fun and charming part of him. But a lot of it definitely was like, if you're going to be a good girlfriend, then you need to get here when I wake up and you need to stay here all day with me because we need to spend time together. So if you're going to be a good girlfriend, you're going to do this, you know?
Yeah.
but he wouldn't say it that way. That's the thing, is like hearing it from the outside, you're like, obviously that doesn't sound right. But the way that he would frame it and put it together, it did feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I just need to be a good girlfriend, you know? Um, so yeah, he started driving a wedge between me and all of my friends and all of my family. Anytime they would say anything against him, he would kind of like flip it and turn it on them. And he would start to like, he would pick at the things that I already, maybe didn't like about my parents, or I was already feeling. Um, and he would just kind of like keep digging into that. So by the time that we decided to elope and get married, it was kind of like, well, if God is telling us we're supposed to get married, if you're sick and you need someone to help take care of you, and if my parents are so against this relationship and they're putting curfews on me and they're telling me not to see you, then maybe I should just leave them and just get married and be done with it, because I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want.
Have you been in a relationship before his?
Yeah, I had been in a 4-year relationship through high school. So from when I was like 16 to 20-ish.
Okay.
And I had dated other people, but I hadn't been in like a serious relationship since that one.
Okay. And did you honestly feel that you were in love with him? Is this why the I mean, obviously I know you said you were doing the whole religious thing and oh, this is a sign maybe we are meant to be together, but was did you ever feel I can't live without this person?
No, honestly, I think I cared about him. I think I thought that I loved him, but I, like, looking back now, I don't think I really did. I think a lot of it was feeling like I had to be with him for whatever reason. Because even leading up to us getting married, um, I had like my brother called me and was like, Lindsay, what are you doing? I don't think this is a good idea. My best friend was telling me like, what are you, they were all saying, what are you doing? And that did start giving me doubts, and that did start making me second guess things and start to pull away. But anytime that I would pull away or I would express doubts, he would flip it on me, and say like, well, you're being a bad girlfriend, you're being a bad fiance, like, how could you do this to me? Don't you know this is God's will? Like, why are you second guessing God? you know um
Use God and your religion against you to manipulate.
hmm yeah, yeah, that was a huge component. I would say would be the religious component. um Definitely.
And did you guys go to
And
church together? Like, did you guys practice Christianity together?
yeah, we went to church, not a lot together, but we did go together. And then more so like when we were married, we did. um but he also, it was so weird because he like would use religion against me, but then he would sometimes turn around and be like, I don't know if God exists, and I'd be like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. He had all kinds of issues. Clearly.
Okay, so
um
now we are getting eloped. What did your
yes.
parents do? I mean, did they did you ever feel, damn, maybe I shouldn't be doing this? Maybe they are right.
Yeah, definitely. I felt that a lot. And I tried very hard to fight him on that and to not follow through. But then I think at the end of the day, when I finally did like pack up my stuff, and I'll never forget this. And like, it's one of those things where I'll always feel so much guilt over it. But like, I packed it because I was living with my parents. So I packed my stuff overnight, and then I told them I was just going to his house like I normally did, like on my day off. But all my stuff was in my car. And I just remember like waving to my parents as I drove away. And I was feeling so horrible and so guilty about driving away. And they don't realize like their daughter is leaving them now, planning on leaving forever. And yeah, I definitely, it was one of those things where I didn't want to do it, but I felt like for whatever reason, I felt like I had to do it. Um, and I think that's something that, unless you've been in a relationship like that where you're that manipulated, I don't know if people can really understand it. I mean, there's even a part of me that doesn't fully understand it, but I think if you've been in it, then you just, anyone I've ever talked to who's been in a relationship like that is like, oh yeah, I get it. Like you just feel like that's for whatever reason, that's what you have to do, you know?
It's weird because it's almost like they put a spell on us, that they
Hmm.
literally do some voodoo crazy shit on us, and we lose all sense of ability to of control over ourselves. um and you're 100% right, because people are always so quick to judge, always. Why are you doing that? Why are you letting him do that? Why are you still with him? Why? I mean, like, people will question, and I'm sure people even thought, oh my God, Lindsay, like, you're an idiot, like, you're putting yourself through that. I hate that when they'll say stuff like that, like, you're putting yourself through this, you're allowing him to do this, you're allowing him to treat you this way. And it's like, okay, you're right, like, you're 100% right. But when you are so wrapped up into something so toxic, the only person who can get you out of it is honestly and truthfully yourself. No matter
Hmm.
who says anything, no matter who's there to help you, no matter, I mean, yes, it's great to have people there to support you and help you. And, they do help influence your final decision. But at the same time, it's, you can't explain it. You can't be, I mean, if, I've heard people who are in those physical relationships, and they're like, why were you still in that relationship? And why'd you let him do this, or whoever it is, or her, vice versa. And they're like, I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, there might be, I was scared, or he threatened me, or threatened my family, or, whatever it is. But at the same time, you really cannot answer it, because it's something that takes over you.
Yeah, it really does. And I mean, I am thankful that so many people were in my corner, even when I didn't know it. And I'm so thankful for the people who continue to check in on me in such a like non-judgmental way. They maybe even didn't know what was going on, but they still could tell something wasn't right. And so they would just text me randomly or call me randomly, to see how I was doing. And I really do think it helped a lot to have those people. But still, even the people who were telling me don't do this, don't do this, like they couldn't get through to me. And I really do think it's like, yeah, that person has to make that decision for themselves, which is hard to sit back and watch.
Especially the people
um
who care for you. They want what's best.
mhm,
And like you said, your family and friends already knew he wasn't. And to
yeah.
them, they feel helpless, and that they can't be there to help guide you, especially as parents. They want what's best for you. And here you are, you just moved out of the house without them even knowing.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, like I will never forget, the day we went to the courthouse and his family was there and his friend was there, but no one that I knew was there. Um, and my sisters were like, "Why didn't you invite us? We would have been there because we would have wanted to be there with you." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to drive a wedge between you and my parents and cause drama and all this stuff." But I just remember sitting in the courthouse and feeling so scared and so alone. But I was there, and I felt like every step of the way, I was like, I have to go through with this for whatever reason. I was like, I can't turn around and just leave. Like, I'm here. His family's here. I have to go through with this. Um, and the night that we got married, he told me, he was like, if anyone is going to ruin this relationship, it's going to be you. He's like, if anyone is going to cause this marriage to end, it's going to be you. And that was the type of things that he would say, just constantly putting me down, saying that I was a bad partner, I was a bad person, and I always needed to prove myself to him.
And nothing provoked
uh,
it. Like, you guys weren't fighting or arguing. He would just randomly say stuff like this.
oh, we fought a lot, especially once we were married. That's when he started to get a lot more verbally abusive. Like he would go on, I swear he would yell for like 3 hours straight, just calling me every possible name in the book, saying that I'm all of these horrible things. And I can't even like honestly tell you what it was that we would fight about now. Like I don't remember. Um, but yeah, I feel like it would just be the tiniest thing that would like set him off. And one of the things that he did, again, isolating me from my family, he didn't let me talk to my family once we were married for a couple months. So even my sister gave birth to my niece like a couple days after we got married, and he wouldn't even let me go see her. I didn't see my niece until she was almost a year old because he didn't want me to see my family.
And how, when you say
Um,
he wouldn't let you, what do you mean by that? Like, what would he do to stop you?
I honestly, I don't remember. I feel like it was kind of like a you have to choose between me and them, and I'm your husband now, so you need to choose me if you want to be a good wife. And again, using the Bible where it says you need to submit to your husband. He took that very literally. So, if you're going to be a good wife, you need to listen to me. And I'm telling you, your family's no good for you, so you can't see them. Um, and he did eventually, when I did finally start calling my siblings to try to kind of explain to them what had happened and try to like make up to them and make my peace. But he would be like, when I called my sister, the one who gave birth, um, he would be right there on the other end of the phone coaching me on what to say.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, my sister would be saying, I'm hurt by you that you didn't come see your niece, blah, 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 blah. And then he would, while I'm listening to her, he would be saying, like, put her on mute. Let me tell you what to say back. And then I would try to walk out of the room and he'd be like, no, come back in here. I want to hear the conversation. So, yeah.
And what about friends? I know you say you had such a great support system then, but even when you got married, was there friends that you were able to reach out to and vent to?
Not really. I think I didn't really know what to say. Um, and he always found some reason to disapprove of people. I mean, my best friend at the time, my old roommate, she was Mormon. And so he would say, like, because she's Mormon and not Christian, she's bad or she's evil or whatever. So I don't want you talking to her because she's going to influence you for whatever reason religiously, like X, Y, and Z. So he would always find something wrong. Um, with my friends and find a reason for me not to be in touch with them. So a lot of the people who did text me and stuff, like I just didn't tell him about it. It was people like Lori and Kirsten at Disney were like the two people who consistently would check in on me. But he didn't really know who they were, so he didn't have anything he could say about them. But I also didn't tell them what was happening either.
They were just being your friends.
Yeah.
Did he check your phone? Like, was that a thing? Like, would he check your social media and check your phone to see where you were going or what you were doing?
No, but mostly because I didn't really go anywhere. Like I felt like I was trapped in this. We lived in the garage of his mom's house that had been converted into like a room. And for the first half of our marriage, I was still working. So that was great. Like I loved going to work. I felt like I could be myself again. I felt like I could breathe again. Um, One of the things that he really controlled, like I said, was what I could eat. So I there was probably like 10 things I was allowed to eat. So I lost a ton of weight. I was like 98 pounds. So I was super, super skinny. But like when I went to Disney, I could eat whatever I wanted, you know. But then because he was so quote unquote sick, um, he started saying, like, I need you here to take care of me because I think what he was having was just really severe panic attacks. So he would get like his heart would be racing, he couldn't breathe, he would feel really faint and dizzy. And so he felt like he needed me there he was afraid of like collapsing or afraid of like choking on his food or something like that. And we would go to doctors after doctors after doctors, and all of them would do all of these tests and they would all say you're fine. Like physically he was perfectly fine. um, and they would recommend like, oh, maybe it's anxiety, but then he would be like, these doctors just don't believe me. So then it was like, so the last probably 6 months of our marriage I wasn't working at all. um, so I wasn't going anywhere. I was literally just like stuck with him.
And did you stop working because he asked you to? He told you to?
Yeah, he basically was saying that he was scared for his life, that he was gonna have some sort of episode if he was alone, and that I needed to take care of him. And there'd be times where I would try to go to work. I'd be like, I need to go to work. And I would get ready to leave, and then he would have a panic attack or whatever it is that he was having. And then I would need to stay, and then I would call in late, and then I'd be like, okay, I need to go to work now. Like, I can't be more than 2 hours late or whatever, I need to go. And then he would just be like, no, I need you to stay with me. So then I'd end up calling out.
Did he have a job? Was he working?
He had 2 jobs over the course of our marriage, but he got fired. He was such a horrible person. But yeah, so no, he didn't work very much.
Did he ever leave the house? Like, did he have friends that he would hang out with? Like,
Mm-mm. No. Well, he had like 2 or 3 good friends that we would sometimes see, the 2 of us together. So we would either go visit them or they would come over. But yeah, neither, like my big outing would be to go to Target to buy groceries or something. That would basically be it.
okay, so you guys were married for 11 months, and I know you stated towards the end of the marriage that it did start becoming abusive, physical abuse. But what led to that? Was it just him getting angry, or maybe because you guys were home alone, just the two of you for 6 months?
Yeah, he would get really angry. And I honestly, like, I feel like I must have some sort of mental block because I really don't remember what we would argue about. I mean, I feel like we would just argue about everything. A lot of times it was probably me saying, like, why won't you let me eat this? Or why won't you let me go to work or whatever? I know he would yell at me for being on my phone too much. Um, he wanted me to like sit with him all the time. He didn't want me to go anywhere. So whatever it is that we would yell about, yeah, he would just again go on these long tirades that would last forever. And we would start the argument and I would be like, I know I'm right, like I know I'm being mistreated. But by the end of the argument,
Were you down?
he would have me crying, feeling like I was this horrible person who had done this to him, which is classic gaslighting. He would always flip it on me and be like, no, you're the one who's bad. You're the one who's being a horrible partner, and this is why. Um, so he towards the end, he started like pushing me. Um, he would I remember him throwing my keys at me. Um, I know one point, I don't know how, but he like scratched my face. Um, Thankfully he like never actually hit me, but yeah, it did start to get physical towards the end. I remember him like locking me out of our room once, and I like almost broke down the door because I was like, how dare you lock me out of our room? So yeah, it was just really bad towards the end.
I remember you telling me that you did reach out to someone in your guys' church. Can you go ahead and share that with us?
Yeah, so when it started getting really bad, he and I said like we needed to seek some help. So he went and he spoke with a pastor that he was friends with, and then I called a friend who I'd been in touch with a little bit on Facebook, um, who was from my old church, kind of just seeking guidance of what I should do. And I didn't tell her the specifics. I didn't tell her the details. I just told her that we were fighting a lot and that it was really bad. Um, and she basically told me that because we were married, I had to stay in that marriage. She said, God hates divorce, and the Bible says that if you get divorced, and you remarry again, then you're committing adultery. And she was like, you don't want to be an adulterer, do you? Like, you don't want to live in sin. And she was saying, you made that commitment before God, so you have to keep it. So no matter how bad it gets, you have to stay. And maybe she wouldn't have said that if she had known the extent of how bad it was. But she said that, and that's also what he was saying to me too. He was also saying, you can't leave me, we can't get a divorce because that's against God's will or whatever. So that also led to me feeling so trapped.
Did you try to leave before you actually left? Was there other, situations or moments that kind of where you were like, okay, I'm done, like this is it?
Yeah, I packed up my car with all of my stuff probably at least like 5 or 6 times, if not more, before I actually left him. And sometimes I would just pack up my car and just sit in my car. Sometimes I would drive away. My out was always that I was going to go see my aunt because my whole family is in LA County, but we lived in Orange County. And I had an aunt in Irvine who had told me, if you ever need anything, my door is always open. Like, you can always come here if you need anything. And so I always knew if I was going to leave, I was going to go there. So there was one night that I actually did drive down there. And the reason that I would always come back is he would always threaten to commit suicide if I left. And the night that I drove down there, but not the night that I actually left, he actually called me, and he had found he had a gun, and I heard over the phone just him sobbing, and I kept hearing like the clicking sound of the gun. And I was like, he told me, I rushed back home because he wasn't saying anything. He was just crying. And I heard the sound and I knew what it was. So I rushed back, and he told me, he's like, I wanted you to hear me kill myself because that would have been your fault. And you needed to know that it was your fault.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't even
So,
imagine what you were going through. The guilt, I mean, ugh. Oh my God.
yeah. So that's why I didn't leave sooner. Although I know most women tend to stay in abusive marriages for, I think the statistic is like 10 years on average. So I actually, people have told me since, like, oh, you left so much sooner than we thought you would. um, but yeah, it felt like if I didn't leave, it felt like if I left him, not only was I a horrible person because he was sick and needed me, but also if I left him, then maybe his life would be on my hands.
Okay, so what about your sex life with him? Was it, was it what okay, was it like what most, newlyweds feel, that obviously you didn't go through a honeymoon stage because that ship fucking sailed a long time ago. But
Yeah.
was it at least romantic? Did you feel any emotions when you guys did make love? Was it making love?
Um, so I was a virgin when we got married. I had been saving myself for marriage because that's what I believed in at the time. So I would say like the first night I was just like really nervous and scared, and like, there's this whole thing too of saving yourself for marriage, and then once you get married, it's like boom, suddenly it's okay. And I know a lot of um, people who are against like purity culture will say like it causes all of this shame and this guilt to be wrapped up in sex, which I definitely agree with. But he definitely, that was another area that he um, basically said I needed to have sex with him, um, to be a good wife and like to fulfill like my wifely duties or whatever. So I definitely didn't enjoy it. I didn't really want to. I mean, why would you if someone's like yelling at you all the time and telling you you're a horrible person? But it was something that I felt like I had to do, like I felt obligated to do. And he would tell me that part of the reason that our marriage was so bad is because I didn't want to.
And he knew it.
Uh,
He knew you didn't want to.
yeah. Um, so yeah, it wasn't very enjoyable for me. I remember telling a friend afterwards, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to want to have sex again. Like, that was just such a horrible experience. Um, but yeah, it was one of those things where I definitely learned more about consent afterwards and how like coercing someone into having sex with you is still not okay,
Yeah.
you know.
So you just kind of shared with us, going through not being, you weren't even intimate with this person. And, intimacy is definitely something that's so important in every relationship. Um, it sucks that that was your first experience. And once again, I can't even imagine that being something that you had to go through and hating it and feeling pretty much like your body's being abused and used for a man. And I think that is something on its own. Um, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But okay, so now we went through this. Talk me through like the divorce and the courage it took you to finally leave after so long, after what we said, 18 months of a relationship, um,
hmm
to move away from it.
Yeah, so I think it just finally got so bad, you know, and I started to feel like I think I knew the whole time that it wasn't right, but I started to really feel like this is not right. Like I don't deserve to be treated this way. Um, and I think I told you the other night when we were chatting about this that I started to feel like because oftentimes he would also threaten to leave, but then he would tell me that whenever he left, that he was like potentially going to go commit suicide. And I'd always like beg him to stay and be like, no, 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 don't go. If anyone's going to leave, let me leave. You stay here. Um, but eventually I got to the point where I think I realized that it was just a control tactic, and I was like, I don't care. Just go. Like just leave. If you're going to leave, just leave. Stop dragging me through this. And one night that he left, I posted on like some anonymous board for something. I don't even know what it was. And I said something to the effect of like, my husband keeps threatening to leave and he finally left and I don't even care that he left. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me or whatever. And I got so much support from people anonymously just telling me, like, oh, that's a sign. That means that, it's not a good relationship, all of these things. So that was the first thing that kind of gave me like a clue into like, oh, okay, something really isn't right here. And then after that, I spent a lot of time on my phone, just like Googling different things, like what's an abusive relationship look like? How do you get out of an abusive relationship? All of this stuff. And then I finally, it's just one night that he left and then he came back, and then he told me like, you're gonna leave tomorrow. And it turned into this huge thing again where he was like yelling at me, and I told him like, okay, fine, whatever, I'm gonna leave tomorrow, but I'm gonna go to sleep because it was like 2 or 3 a.m. And then he started yelling at me and getting really mad, and he like pulled me out of the bed and threw me to the ground, and he was like, no, you're not gonna sleep in my bed tonight. And I don't know, it was this whole thing. And he was yelling at me, and the thing that like really kind of put the nail in the coffin was when he told me, um you're you don't amount to anything, like you don't matter to anyone, you've never done anything good for any person. And when he said that, it was like almost like it like flipped a switch inside of me. And I was like, I know that that is wrong. I know that I matter. I know that I mean something to a lot of people. I know that I've been a positive person in a lot of people's lives. And it just like flipped a switch in me where I was like, that's wrong. And you don't deserve any more of my time. Um, so my car had already been packed. It had already been, I think I left it packed for like a couple of weeks because I got so tired of packing it and unpacking it that I just left all my stuff in there. So I just grabbed like one more bag of things that was already packed, and I just got in my car and I just left. And I drove to my aunt's house, and I sat outside her house until like 5 a.m. because I knew she woke up really early. So I was waiting to see her light turn on, and then I called her and I was like, "Can I come inside?" um, and just sat on the couch with her and told her everything that happened, and went to my parents' house the next day.
Were you ever embarrassed or ashamed by everything that you put yourself through?
I think a little bit, but I think thankfully I had such a good support system when I came back. Like, thankfully, my parents, just welcomed me with open arms. I had so many friends that I had really hurt. All my friends and my family I had really hurt because I'd cut them out of my life and told them, like, don't contact me and stuff like that. And so I had to go through a series of like phone calls and meeting with people to kind of apologize and explain what had happened. And like every single person welcomed me back with so much love and grace and forgiveness that um, I think I did feel really horrible for how I had treated them, but they also were so supportive and so like they understood, and they were like, it's not your fault. So that really helped. And then I went to therapy, and that also helped.
So, are you legally divorced from him?
Yes. So it took a full year for the divorce process, um, just to like, file all the paperwork and go through everything. But I got the legal divorce. Friend of mine, Savannah, helped me serve him with his papers, and um, he definitely put up a little bit of a fight. He didn't want to get a divorce, but I was like, no, this is happening. And thankfully, he didn't like, thankfully, we had everything separate. So there was nothing that we had to divide or anything like that. Thank goodness there were no kids or pets or anything. So it was a pretty clean break for the most part.
And you never try to go back to him after that one time that you went to your aunt's?
No. He called me and he tried to get me back, of course. He emailed me after I think I finally like blocked him, his phone number. He would email me a lot. He actually stalked me. He showed up to my house or my parents' house when I wasn't there, and my dad like told him like, don't you ever come back here ever again. I had a blog at the time that I was kind of using to keep everyone updated on what I was going through, and somehow he found out what church I was going to at the time. I don't know how. I'm assuming one of our mutual friends told him. And I found out later that he had like shown up at my church trying to find me, but thankfully I wasn't there that day. Um, but he didn't, I mean, I think he eventually finally just gave up. um, and I think again, it goes back to the support system that I had, that they didn't tell me like don't you dare go back to him, but I think just having so many people be so supportive made me realize that like I didn't need to.
Yeah. So, how long has it been now since this all kind of finalized?
It's been 5 years since I left him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Almost five. It'll be 5 years and at the end of May. And then 4 years about since the official divorce. So Yeah, I had to do the whole divorce process myself. I didn't get an attorney or anything like that. I just had a few phone calls with different people to help me figure out what papers I needed. Um, and I've seen three separate therapists over the course of the past 5 years, um, to kind of work through it all, which was really helpful. And I highly recommend to anyone going through anything like this. So,
Do
yeah,
you
and I'm happy.
do you have PTSD from your marriage?
No, I think I'm surprisingly able to like kind of compartmentalize that and push it aside. It almost feels like it was another person. It almost feels like it didn't happen to me. Sometimes I almost forget that it happened. Um, but there can definitely be things that are triggering. Me and my roommate were watching 50 Shades of Grey the other night, and that was actually a little bit triggering because Christian Grey in that story is so controlling. And I was like, I can push it aside, but it's definitely like in the back of my mind the whole time watching this. Um, so there'll be certain things that will trigger me, but I feel like I've worked through most of the trauma of it.
And I think this seeking help speaks volumes because there's so many people who are either afraid, ashamed, can't afford it, or whatever the reason that can't seek help or that they don't seek help. And these people are, traumatized and struggling through it and may never heal because they didn't seek the proper help that they needed. And you kind of show that you went through something so traumatic and at such a young age, and you have been able to move on from it, and you're able to talk about it without the crying, the tears, without all of those emotions, because you went through the proper stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
allowed yourself to go through it and rebuild yourself back up to the woman you are today.
thank you. Yeah, and I will say the first year was really, really hard. Like I definitely was really depressed. I guess actually now looking back, I did have a lot of guilt, mostly towards my parents because I think they were treated the worst out of anyone in my life as a result. So yeah, I felt a lot of guilt and regret over that, and like just yeah, days where I just did not want to get out of bed, didn't want to do anything. But I think talking to a lot of people helped. Using a blog as an outlet really helped. I did a lot of reading, a lot of journaling, and then yeah, I really think going to therapy helped. I remember the second therapist I saw, um, when I just talked through the everything that happened. I cried a lot, and I kind of worked through a lot of the guilt that I had felt. Um, and I think that's why, yeah, now I can talk about it without crying because I'm just like, it happened. Whatever, it's done.
Were you have you been in a relationship since this happened?
Yes, I've been in
And
a couple short term relationships.
were you nervous, scared? Like, what were your emotions before going into them? Because I can only imagine going through such something so traumatic, and especially losing your virginity to someone and having such a negative experience with him. How was it you moving on?
Well, the first person that I dated afterwards, I had known for a really long time, and he knew the whole story. So that was really helpful because I didn't feel like I had to explain too much. I definitely, like, in times of intimacy in my first couple relationships, there'd be times where I would just start crying for no reason. Like, I would just like burst into tears. And thankfully, they were all really understanding and caring through that. So yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was definitely scary. I think it's still hard now to like bring it up. Like, at what point in the dating process do you say, oh, by the way, I'm divorced and I had an abusive marriage, and having to like retell it, every time you start getting into a relationship can be hard. Um, but I think it always helped me to just be as upfront as quickly as possible, because then I could say in a moment of like an argument or in a time where I did feel triggered by my partner, I could say like, I know this isn't you. I know you're not him, but what you're doing right now is triggering what I went through. And I'm not saying that you are my ex, but this action that you're doing right now is reminding me of that. So um, I think just being as open as possible from the beginning has helped.
Well, it's crazy that you just mentioned that, how you start to notice and you start to say, like, hey, this is kind of, I'm noticing a behavior that is similar.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went through that with my husband. Our first year of us dating, um, I was used to toxic relationships. I was used to the relationships where you would yell, you would fight. I will be honest, my ex-boyfriend before my husband, I didn't respect him. I was very because I never really truly loved him. I kind of got with him for a stupid, selfish reason, and I didn't know how to communicate. And the way I would communicate would be yelling, crying, screaming, or having an anxiety attack, which then led me to being on the floor screaming like a fucking child. Um, and when my husband and I first started dating, and he would start doing little things that would remind me of a previous relationship, I would freak out. And I think he and I got in an argument within knowing each other for like a week or two. Like literally, it was super fast. It was on New Year's Eve in 2011 when we first met. I thought he was flirting with some other girl, and I got super jealous. And I remember I was like, if you want to, you can leave if you want to, because he was at like my apartment at a party. And I was like, if you want to leave, you can go ahead and leave. Well, then he was just as stubborn and a pain in the ass as I was. And he's like, well, fine, I'm going to leave. But we both knew that we had very similar personalities, that, okay, if he leaves, this is it. Like we're not, he didn't have time for games. He didn't have time for
Right.
anything. And it quickly made me realize, okay, once I fell in love with him, I was like, all right, he's not going to put up with my shit that all my exes put up with, because he's not like
Mm-hmm.
that. He's not a controlling, crazy, stubborn, narcissist that I was used to. He's not that. And I quickly had to learn that I needed to change my behaviors if I wanted to be with him. And he too, because my husband has super anger management issues, and he learned too, like he didn't want to hurt me. So he had to quickly learn, okay, if I have depression or anger, he had to go seek help and go seek a doctor to figure out what was going on with him, internally, because we both knew that wasn't the direction we wanted to go. And I told myself, I refuse to be in a relationship like that. I refuse to argue and fight and yell. And you start to notice those, the red flags that are thrown at you. And I think that is something that's so important, to start realizing it right from the beginning and having those boundaries and saying like, no, like this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to let this happen again. Because very easily we get trapped into what we know. We get trapped into what feels familiar, and in our sick minds, it's comfortable. It's like, this is what I'm used to, but it's like, no, you have to start noticing that this is not healthy and this is not okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's hard to speak up when you notice those things, like, and I know it's easy for me to second guess myself, like, oh, am I being too sensitive or whatever? But I think I did a lot of work in trying to relearn my worth and to realize like I don't deserve to be talked to a certain way, and I'm not going to allow anyone to talk to me like that again. So if anyone says anything to me that brings up those feelings again, like I'm going to say it, because I know that I went through that and I'm not ever going to go through that again. So, yeah. Yeah, it's hard, but it's important to stand up for yourself, and to do that work.
Do you ever believe or hope to get married again?
Oh, yes. I do. I really, all I've ever wanted in life, I feel like, is to like have a family. So So I really do want to, I look forward to getting married and having a family, and I want to do it the right way. Like I want to have not like a crazy big wedding, but I want to have a wedding with like my family and my friends there. And um, I really look forward to when that happens and hopefully finding the right person. I will say I do get really scared about being trapped or feeling trapped again, because I felt so trapped in my first marriage and I felt like I couldn't get out for so long. So, I mean, I'm just hoping that I'll find the right person and that I'll never ever feel that way again, but that might be something I'll have to work through when it comes time for that.
And I think you've already said it numerous times. It's that communicating, and it'd be me being married. I've been married now for 5 years. I'd be lying if I said I never felt trapped. And it's not him trapping me per se. It's not what he has done. It's just my own insecurities or my own curiosity, or however you want to state it. But to have that communication with your spouse and talk them through and be like, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is why I think I'm feeling this way. Can you help me walk me through it? It's seriously, and I know it sounds super cliche, but a relationship is honestly about communication. And trust will kind of come with that naturally.
Mhm.
But communicating if you do feel trapped, and knowing that even in a healthy relationship, you can feel that way. And like I said, it's not necessarily them trapping you or doing something like that. It could be your own thoughts. But understanding, like, there is no such thing as a perfect relationship. Like,
Yeah.
there just isn't. But we talked about it earlier, or not today, but a previous time, that it shouldn't be hard work to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that frustrates me when people say that. I remember when my husband and I first started dating, and he would tell me, because I would try to give up. I would give up all the time because I was like, nope, this is too much. This is too much. It's taking too much energy out of me. I don't have the energy for this. And he'd be like, no, we have to work hard. We have to work hard. We have to work hard. And I would tell him, like, no, I don't believe that. I don't believe you should be literally working hard where you have tears, where you have stress, anxiety, all the negative things. You shouldn't be having to go through that to hold onto a relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing. Anytime anyone asks me about me and my husband's marriage, I say it's effortless.
Yeah.
It's as easy as breathing. Once again, we don't have a perfect marriage. We don't have a perfect relationship. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect. We do have our struggles or the things that we go through, but at the same time, we work through it together and we have that communication. But it's understanding that and knowing, like, okay, I know I'm not going to have this, right? You're never going to have this abusive person in your life again, and knowing that and putting your foot down and not allowing it and putting that boundary up for yourself, but also knowing you deserve what you want. You deserve what you desire. You deserve that love and that marriage and that wedding and that family. Like, you have a right. We as humans have a right to deserve something. It's not
Yeah.
it's not entitlement. It's not, being selfish. It's none of that. And I think society has made us think that, but we as humans have one life to live. And girl, you better believe that you are going to live the life that you want to.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I agree with what you say. That's why I like the title that we picked for this, is Love Isn't Supposed to Hurt, because that was a phrase that really stood out to me when I finally decided to leave, is that yes, relationships will be hard. Yes, there will be hard conversations, there will be arguments, of course, but they're not supposed to hurt so much. It's not supposed to be this constant struggle, Um, and I always strive to, yeah, be in those relationships where it's like, we don't even argue, we just communicate. Maybe we'll have like a hard conversation, but like, I don't know, I just feel like it's supposed to be something that, you respect one another and you value one another and you really support one another. And it's like, we are a team, we're going through this together, and so we're going to do everything we can to help each other and to help us understand one another. And it's like, I don't know. I know that's out there for me. And I just can't wait to find it.
Aw, that's awesome. I love it. And you deserve it and you will get it because,
Thanks.
like I said, you deserve it. You just got to keep that in the back of your mind that no matter what past you have gone through, it doesn't define you. It has molded you who you are today, yes, but it has pushed you and it has opened your eyes and made you realize that you deserve so much more than what your past did to you.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, I definitely feel like I learned so much going through that. I'm a completely different person than I was in my early 20s when I entered into that relationship. And it taught me so much about pain, grief, other ways of living. I think it gave me a lot of empathy to understand that everyone is struggling, everyone has some untold story that you know nothing about, and things aren't always as simple as they seem on the surface. And so, even though I'm not like necessarily glad I went through that, you know, I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but I'm thankful for everything that I learned as a result of it. So,
Well, it's funny you
yeah.
say that. Our good friend Chris Yu, on my
Yeah.
time with him, when he and I were chatting before we started filming, I was venting to him about all the things that I had been going through and all the stress and everything. And he straight up told me, he's like, Tiara, I'm actually really glad you went through all of that. He's like, not to be mean or anything. He's like, but you needed to grow from it. You needed to learn from it. You now have this story that you can share. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important, especially with you, Lindsay, and having the courage to come on to my tea time and share with all my viewers is that it's not only helping other people, but it's also helping yourself grow. And it's helping, like, it's not healthy just to block out a memory. Like, we know that. Obviously, you don't want to, you don't want to live it and breathe it every single day. You don't want to harp on it. You don't want to overanalyze it. But at the same time, it's still part of who you are. And having that courage to talk it out and, tell random strangers of the journey that you went through just speaks volumes of your courage. And I am just so proud of you that you're alive to share this. And like you said, all of us have a story that people don't know about. And we only, especially now with social media, we only post what we want people to see. But at the same time, it has made you a stronger, badass woman today than you were at 22. And it's
Yeah.
because you went through that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Tiara. And I think you know, again, I've said this before, but I love what you're doing with these because I think it is so important for people to be vulnerable and to tell their stories and to talk about these really hard issues because I feel like when you're going through it, you feel like you're the only person who has ever gone through this, or you know, no one else can ever understand what it is that you're going through. And obviously every person's story and experience is unique, but it's like, no, there are people who have gone through similar things, and I think we just don't know about it because people don't talk about it. So I feel like it's so important to try, I think, your best to be as vulnerable and open as you possibly can, because only by telling your story will, I feel like it's really freeing. As for me, like, it's freeing to be able to tell this story and be like, no, it doesn't have anything over me, because it just doesn't. Like, I can just talk about it. It's not a big deal. It happened. And I'm happy to tell anyone. I always tell everyone I'm an open book. You can ask me any question you want. Like, I don't care. I'll tell you what happened. And it's freeing for me, but it also, I mean, I hope it helps other people too who have gone through that or who are going through it, to know that your situation may be unique, but you're also not alone. And, you know, there are a lot of people who've gone through this and who want to help you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think we are probably way past our time. I lost track on it. So, is there anything that you'd like to say before we close up this chapter?
Um, I would just say, I guess, if there is anyone who happens to be watching who resonated with this story, if you feel like you're going through that currently, I know it feels so hard and it feels so scary and it feels like you can't leave and it feels like you're trapped. And maybe you feel like you have nowhere to go, but I promise you there are resources out there. There are people who love you and care about you and who want you to be safe. And you do deserve so much more. And it really just takes that first step to just say, you know, I'm worth more than this, and I'm going to find a way to get out. So I hope no one watching this is going through that, but if you are, you're stronger than you think you are and you got this. And if you haven't gone through this, just again, that whole idea of having empathy and love for the people around you, because you don't know what it is that they've either gone through or they are going through. So that's my little soapbox.
And I love it. And once again, you deserve it. You all deserve it. And don't let anyone tell you differently. Don't anyone tell you that you don't deserve what you desire, because you do.
Okay.
So, all righty, Miss Lindsay, let's go ahead and close up this chapter. Let's take one more cheers. Cheers.
Here.
So good.
Refreshing after all that.
All right, I'm going to thank all of you again for watching Tea Time with T and L with Lindsay Johnson as my guest for chapter 26. Love shouldn't hurt. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.